Hello. Hey everyone, this is Holly Chantal, the president of the Land of Brand, and this is the LOBoratory, which is a weekly webinar that I host every Wednesday at 12 o'clock Eastern. And today I'm actually going to try broadcasting it on Facebook Live, so we will try this for the first time, see how that works. But for you regular LOBoratory Mad Brand scientists, we meet every Wednesday, 12 o'clock Eastern. If you would like to subscribe to get reminders and what our topics are each week, you can go to thelandofbrand.com. And for those of you that are new, here is a little bit of a rundown on how it works. So this is a free community. Like I said, we meet every week. Topics primarily come from you guys, so if you have a topic that you want to see, you can email Holly at thelandofbrand.com. There are replays available at the blog. However, I do love to see you guys live because I love answering your questions and getting participation, getting your opinions, because you know what, I'm not the only expert in a lot of the things we're talking about. So I love to hear the results you guys are getting or things that you're trying, because I believe that your business and growing your business is all about experimenting and seeing what works, what doesn't work, and what can be improved. And every week we're talking about a different topic that aligns with that. So this week we're talking about how do you rebrand, also called changing positions, pivoting within your market without alienating your audience and or sabotaging all of the work that you have already done. So how do you do that? Specifically, what we're going to be covering is the 3 reasons that you may choose to change directions, repositioning and what that means for you and your audience, and then how do you smooth that transition so that you don't lose your oomph in your business. A lot of times it might feel like you're starting over, or what you're going to be doing is just too different from what you have been. And you might fear that you're going to be losing your audience, alienating them, or that you've done all this work up until now and you don't want it to be all for waste, right? So that's really what we're going to be talking about today, is how do you make this transition gracefully and get the most from your efforts. So there are 2 ways that businesses start and grow primarily. They start by choosing one audience and one offering. If you're starting out in your business, you probably hear this over and over again that you need to choose a very specific audience and a niche to begin with. And that's where we all start. And where we go from there is usually either we take our offering to other markets, or we stick with the same market that we're in, the same target audience, and we just start adding more offerings. But sometimes that traditional trajectory doesn't work for everyone. And so when we're talking about rebranding, we're not just talking about adding something. We're talking about changing how the market is perceiving you and the thing that you really want to be known for. Because you don't want to flush all the work that you've already done down the drain, right? So if you've been in business for a couple years, then you've put a lot of effort into what you've created, and whether or not it's still serving you doesn't necessarily mean that all that effort should just be put down the tubes. So as businesses grow, they may decide to reposition themselves for a higher slice of the market. So maybe they, have their sights set on serving a more advanced audience than what they're serving right now, or they might be wanting to move into a different market altogether. They may not enjoy the market that they're working in, or they may have chosen the low-hanging fruit in their business originally, and they've created a very successful business, and I've seen this happen a few times, and now they want to focus on what they really care about. So they kind of, started their business and made the choices they did largely out of fear. And now that they have more confidence in themselves or a business owner, or have realized that their passion really lies elsewhere, they want to make that transition. The third thing reason why they might be changing directions is that they find that their message or brand is no longer accurate for what they do or how they work. Sometimes that shift just begins to happen organically and your brand doesn't actually keep up. And when that happens is your clients and who you're working with, they know and love you for who you really are. But the people you're attracting it's almost like your best stuff is being hidden behind the scenes. And again, this is something that I've worked on a few people with, is it's like their best stuff is the hidden secret. Even though they have a really great online presence, they've built a great business and a brand, and they're known for what they do, they're actually known for the wrong things, that there's even more awesome and more amazingness out there that they haven't even begun to scratch the surface yet. So, and then the fourth one is that you need to respond to changes in the marketplace. The marketplace changes, trends come, they go, people are needing different things all the time. Your business may become outdated, and in order for you to keep up and keep going, you need to be able to pivot and change directions to meet the needs of your audience as those needs change. So this is not about being indecisive in your business. So I know a lot of us, when we start out, we're very indecisive about who we want to serve, what we want to do. So if you're finding that you're having to make this change every year, I would say that's like the least frequent. You know, some people are changing every couple of months because they're not getting any traction. But if you're changing your business every year and you're kind of like, your identity is confusing, you keep kind of doing different things, that's not what we're talking about here. That's a whole other issue. Though you could use some of the tips that I'm going to give you in order to do that. And this is also not about chasing trends or shiny new ideas. This is not shiny object syndrome, where again, you're pivoting just because you think something's cool or innovative. When we're talking about brands, we're talking about something that is consistent, that is built over time. And yes, a brand is always going to be a work in progress. It's going to grow with you. But this is more of like a surprising change, or a very intentional pivot that you're going to make in order to change the way you're doing business. So what is repositioning or rebranding? Let's talk about what this is. So I think I mentioned a couple of these already. It's changing what you're known for in your business. So deciding that your business is going to have a different message. It's guiding perceptions of your current and new followers and prospects. So when we're talking about a brand in general, your brand is really how people are perceiving and experiencing your business. Sometimes that's how they're experiencing you, but the other assets are more passive ways that they're experiencing you. And the message you have, the passion that you have for your business, the experience that you want to create. So all those touch points that a client has with you are pieces of your brand, and they're all creating certain perceptions. So when you reposition or rebrand, you want to change what those perceptions are. And we'll talk a little bit about how you might do that. And sometimes it involves a total overhaul of everything. You have to break it down, start from scratch. Other times it's just subtle changes or some kind of focused campaign that help change those market perceptions. And I'm going to give you two examples. So the first example is Penney. A few years ago, they changed their, so obviously Penney didn't change itself. It was still a department store. It's still, the brand color stayed the same. The name stayed the same. It was still recognizable as Penney. So they didn't alienate their current audience and completely, come out of left field doing something different. But they did want to change how they were perceived. So instead of being the, wait for the sale and, the discount, always doing discounts and that kind of thing, they rebranded to it was like the JCPenney fair and square type brand. So they wanted to change their perception to, our prices are fair all the time. You don't have to wait for a sale. You can always come in at any time, and the price isn't going to change on you. And the whole feeling that they were trying to create behind that was like a feeling of honesty, a feeling of dependability, and fair and square. And it really in the end, it ended up backfiring. The people that their audience, the particular audience that shops at JCPenney, were the kinds that seek bargains and seek discounts and like the sales. So it really ended up backfiring them on the end. But this is a good example because many of you have saw this campaign roll out, where they had the I think Ellen DeGeneres was their spokesperson, and they had all of the commercials talking about not having to wait for a sale, and this is square. It's exactly what you would expect all the time, honesty. So they use those words and that imagery and these commercials to do a campaign that really indoctrinated you into this new way of thinking about JCPenney. Another example is Buick. So Buick had an aging target audience, and they were no longer buying vehicles, so their sales were going down. So they had to change directions to seek the younger generation. So this is an example of, the marketplace is changing and you have to respond and pivot. So Buick did a little bit more of an overhaul. They redesigned their vehicles. They, basically came up in times with the ways vehicles look now. Like when you think of a Buick, there's a very specific picture that comes into your head on what a Buick looks like. It's always been very distinctive. So they had to change that to be more appealing to the millennial generation. And so they not only did they change how their cars looked and the features they had and that kind of thing, they also ran campaigns to change the perception, featuring younger audience, kind of poking fun at the fact that the new Buicks are not what you would expect. I think the commercials are actually still on because I feel like I've seen them recently, where someone's coming out of a club and they're like, hey, I'm in my Buick, and the woman is looking all over the place. I don't see your car, because they're looking for like a boat, basically. And instead they're in this like really hip new car. So by doing that, they begin to change your perceptions. They begin to change how you're seeing Buick. And they're also, for those that don't have those preconceived notions ingrained in them, so some of the younger generations aren't familiar with the old Buicks. They're still positioning themselves as being a hip new car that is luxurious and that your friends are going to admire and that kind of thing. So they're still being attractive to that audience. So in that way, they are being attractive to the new audience, while also they haven't alienated the old audience, but they're actually indoctrinating them into the new brand. So these kinds of campaigns where you basically just start changing the language about how you're talking about your business, you start changing the position that you are putting out there as why people should hire you, why your services are best suited for your audience, it changes your brand. And a lot of times when people are thinking about rebranding, you're just thinking about, I need to redo my website, I need to change the colors, change my logo, change the name, or whatever it is that you're doing. But a repositioning can be much more subtle than that. And actually, the imagery doesn't matter as much as the message and the marketing and how you're delivering the brand and how that's creating a perception around you. So how do you do this without losing your oomph? So, we don't want to put the brakes on in your business so that you can start pivoting. Your business still needs to be running. And how do you navigate this change without alienating people or just coming out of left field and completely changing things, and so you lose a lot of your current following? So I think I have 4 examples here of kind of different scenarios that you might be going through, and just some questions to ask yourself, like how you might navigate that change. So if you're completely changing things up, like let's say I have one business and I want to go into a completely other industry because I just don't really like what I'm doing anymore. This happens a lot. Entrepreneurs as a whole, we are typically very innovative. We are very passionate. Our passions change. Our interests change. We like things that are fresh and new. So sometimes, after being in business for years, you might decide that you're burned out. You don't want to do this anymore, and there's something else that has caught your eye. So how do you change things up without, just bringing your bank account down to zero, if you will? So first, can your old business be somehow automated? Is there a way for you to hire someone to take it over? Is there a way that you can maintain the status quo to support you while you begin this new business and that starts to get traction. So you might hire a team to run that business, or you might devote a percentage of your time to the old business while you're building the new business. In this way, you're keeping all of those assets that you've already created and all that work that you've already done, and you're also starting this new venture. And this is a pretty drastic example where you're like completely doing something else. And then you will be building a new audience, and you can also start introducing your old audience to the new business and kind of make a gradual shift. If you're doing like this kind of change, you're typically not going to just, snap my fingers and my whole website's going to change. You want to somehow keep those old assets running and kind of pumping up your bank account so that your new idea needs to be tested and needs to grow, just like your old business did when you first started. Chances are the new business is going to grow faster because you actually know what you're doing now, but that you still want to give yourself that wiggle room and that space to be able to create what you want to create without feeling that pressure. So what about if you are pivoting within your market? So let's say I am serving a particular audience and I am doing, let's say it's the Land of Brand. The Land of Brand, we do brand strategy and design. Let's say I wanted to pivot and either I wanted to add like a new thing to be known for, or let's say I wanted to take away website design and only be known for strategy. That would be a pivot within my market, and I would need to change how I'm being perceived. But if I'm eliminating that piece, I'm eliminating a stream of revenue. So how do you do that without how do you eliminate that stream of revenue and grow the other side of revenue so that you're not cutting your income in half? So again, do you need to nix the old, or could you somehow sub-brand it or somehow automate it? So what I could do, and I probably shouldn't use myself as an example, but the Land of Brand website design could become a sub-brand that maybe I start farming out. Maybe it's something I don't want to do anymore, so I start putting together a list of referral partners that I can refer out to people. Or actually, I have a better example for how something could be sub-branded. So one of our clients, Cindy Schultzen, you guys might be familiar with her, marketing from within. She was pivoting in her business. She started off with a tractor niche, and she was working with a lot of beginner business owners that were choosing what their niche was, what it is they were really going to build their business on. And she's been in business for, I think it's 10 to 15 years. And she was finding that her real joy was really helping people market businesses that had already had traction. Maybe they were having traction offline, maybe they were online, but what they really wanted was a marketing plan that was really authentic to them, that played to their strengths, and was also something that really reflected their passion. So that was a shift within her market. She was serving the same audience, but she wanted to shift how she was perceived. So we created a new site, she created her new offerings, her new message, and then she's keeping the Attract Your Niche sub-brand. She took that brand and made it a sub-brand. So she still has some of her offerings that were under that brand. She still has the domain name. I believe there's a landing page now. So it's something that she's known for creating because she's been around for so long. It would not have made sense for her to just clear the board, clear that right off of her plate, because that's what a lot of people know her for and how they've been searching for her. And she has a lot of assets that are out there that have that old business name on it. So by keeping it and kind of bringing it to the behind the scenes more so, and shifting her message to this new message and seeking that new audience and that new positioning, she was able to, add services and shift her audience gradually without actually, hurting her business. Another so the other thing you want to consider is what can you keep that will make things still recognizable. So Cindy is actually the perfect example. We kept her brand colors. We took her old logo and just updated it, so that all of the old assets she has are still recognizable within the new brand. She didn't have to do a complete overhaul of everything she's ever created in the entire time of her business in order to keep things consistent. That saved her a lot of time, a lot of money, and for her, her logo and her colors actually still really represented her, and it ended up being a really good fit. And then last but not least, how could you take your new brand position and build it on the old? So when you look at the message of your current brand and the message of the new position that you want to take, do they build on each other? Are you just now speaking to a market that's a piece of the market that's a little bit further ahead? Is this just a maturation of your business? And again, this was definitely the case for Cindy in that her message has just grown beyond what her brand was. She had actually been doing this work for a very long time. It just hadn't made it into her base brand message. So for her, the marketing from within was just a next step from attract your niche. So she was able to, take that message and just start building it into her marketing. She did a beautiful job of this transition. She did a couple webinars talking about the new message. She did sharing it with her audience on Facebook. When she did the big launch of the new site, like she really was just saying, this is where my passion has really been, and this is what I want to do for people. And this, if this serves you, then here's how you can now engage me. And she launched a membership site and all these different programs that were now geared toward that new message. So if you want to check her out, it's marketingfromwithin.com, and she did a fantastic job of this. So the third example, if you're seeking a new audience, so how do you update your audience without alienating your current one? So let's say you are that's an example. I want to use the fourth one. Let's say that you want to seek a more advanced audience within your market. So the people that you're working with right now, or you're attracting a lot of clients that have been draining you. They're not really your sweet spot. They may have been at one point, but you're just not really enjoying it anymore. So it's time for you to start targeting a newer audience that is going to give you that inspiration again and get you excited again about your business. So a couple questions would be, can you use the trickle-down effect to update your audience without alienating your current one? And if you're unfamiliar with the trickle-down effect, I did a webinar on this a couple weeks ago. It is on our blog at the Land of Brand. But the trickle-down effect, just to be really quick about it, is when you are speaking to a particular audience and your message also meets the needs of audiences that may be less advanced or at a different stage of the journey. And the trickle-down effect means that you want to put your message to the highest level of the audience that you want to work with, and let that message trickle down. And to make that make even more sense, the difference is if an audience is less advanced and you're speaking to them, the more advanced audience is going to think that you don't serve them or you're not equipped to serve them. But on the flip side, if you are messaging and speaking to the higher level audience, that more advanced audience, the ones that are less advanced are going to know that if you're working with these people up here, you can obviously serve them down here as well, and they're still going to approach you. Maybe you have a different set of offerings that's for that lower level, but you're not going to alienate them. Where if you were speaking to the people at this level, you're going to alienate the higher audience because they're going to think you don't have the skills or experience to really meet their needs because their needs are greater and they're sometimes a little bit trickier or more advanced. So that's what the trickle-down effect is. So in your new audience, does the trickle-down effect apply? If you just start speaking to that new audience will your old audience still jive with you? And if they don't, are they really ideal for you? Like, is your old audience, is it okay if you alienate them? Or are there ways that you can, speak to maybe when you're writing campaigns or when you're writing copy, is there a way that you can kind of segment your old audience from your new audience? It's probably what I would do is take them as different lists almost and promote to them in different ways until you make the full transition. Like I was saying, it's kind of like old business and new business while your new business is getting traction. And then how can you leverage your current assets and update them for your new audience? So what this means is, how can you take all the copy on your website, the programs you've already created, any marketing material, blog posts, trainings that you've done, and change the message or just update them to speak to this new audience. Another example of why you might be going to a new audience might be, let's say you're just completely changing markets. Let's say you're serving direct sales professionals and then you change to coaches. This was the same, that was actually the change I made when I first started my business. After a year, I switched from, I was serving direct sales professionals and switched to coaches, and I've been serving coaches primarily ever since. So what I did was I took all of those blog posts, all of those trainings, everything that I had already created, and just changed the language, changed, because direct sales professionals and coaches have a lot of the same needs as far as they're both service professionals. They both need personal brands. They both need websites that do a lot of the same things. But the language they use is different, and their needs and why they need those things are different. So just updating that language, you can take a lot of the work you've already done and repurpose it basically. And then the last way that you might be repositioning is you're updating your message. So let's say this is like for those people that you've been in business for a long time and your message has grown or changed and your brand just hasn't caught up. So all your best stuff is basically hidden behind the scenes. And the question I have for you is, if you were to make that shift, will your current audience really be all that surprised? And those that don't jive with that new message of yours, again, are they really your ideal clients? So a perfect example of this, a recent client, we actually just launched her website, Patty Lennon. She is a really fantastic business coach, and she has a lot of expertise in crowdfunding, and she'd built a brand around herself that was all about, those practical skills and the, how to get crowdfunding for your startup and things that you would think of as being very, practical business advice. But behind the scenes, she actually has a very spiritual side, and a lot of the decisions she makes and a lot of the material she teaches on is about, how to listen to your intuition. And that this was a piece of her message that I thought was really interesting and cool. Crowdfunding there's the nuts and bolts pieces you have to do in order to get crowdfunding, and there's the strategy behind it. But then there's also the inner work of being able to ask for money, being able to receive help from others. That spiritual side of things was what was missing from her brand. And yet, the people that actually worked with her, they said that was the best part. Yes, she has really practical advice. Yes, she has strategy, up the nose that you can implement and make buco bucks from. But it was those inner pieces and listening to your intuition and doing things that are really in alignment with your spirit and your soul was why her clients loved her and stayed with her. So we basically just pivoted her brand and brought that new message to the forefront. So now the new people she's going to be attracting are already going to be on board with that message. They're going to be seeking that out. Those are her ideal clients. The old audience and the people that have already been following her for the last 7 years, one is probably not coming as much of a surprise because, this has always been an underlying behind-the-scenes message for those that have worked with her. They're very familiar with it already. And those that turn their nose up at it are probably not the people that she would want to work with anyway. So it ended up being, a really natural shift for her. And again, how can you leverage your current assets and update them with your new message? So again, with Patty, what we did was we went through her old sales pages. We went through her old program, and she's re-recording some things. We changed up some sales pages so that they started to not completely change the angle, the result, the features, or anything like that, but just kind of weaving in this message and this updated brand in it, so that she didn't have to really do a complete overhaul or nix any of her old programs or anything like that. She was able to leverage all of that. So here are some ways to kickstart your rebrand. So here's, I've given you some examples about these different scenarios for pivoting in your market, but here's some other ideas that, a little more concrete. So keep your audience informed and build excitement, just like as if you're launching a product. Same thing. If you're relaunching your brand, you want to build excitement. So treat it like a launch. Seed out some information. Maybe leak some screenshots of your new website. Start testing out your message. See how your audience responds. Another idea is to create a series of emails or videos. Again, just like a product launch, or host a webinar that begins to indoctrinate your old audience into your new brand. Things that you'd want to cover in this training would be talking about your new message and why this shift is important to you. So why are you making this change? What have you learned over your time in business? What do you know about your audience that you didn't know before, and why is that important? How is this shift going to help them reach their desired incomes faster, more efficiently, better, however, more authentically, whatever that shift is going to be? Engage them in how they can get involved. So, talk about your new programs. Like I said, Cindy, she launched a new membership. How can they start getting involved in this message? How can they start making this change, this impact that's really important to you? Because, assuming that the business that you're in, the reason why you're in business, which is why a lot of us are in business, is because we have this big change that we want to see in the world. Start talking about that. How can they get involved? Is there a challenge? Is there a program? Is there a community that you've created that they can start, basically getting their feet wet into this new direction that your business is headed, and continue on the journey with you. And then last but not least, change all of your high-profile assets first. So everything that's forward-facing that people are going to see right away, make sure all those things change at the same time. Then once that happens, then you can start looking at secondary assets after the launch. So updating blog posts, updating particular programs or sales pages. Those things can wait. If you try to do everything before you launch your new brand, it may never end up happening. You may never actually end up finishing. And this is why sometimes website projects or rebrand projects can be drawn out really, really much longer than they need to be. Because if you're waiting for everything to be perfect, you're probably never going to finish. So my recommendation is, make a list or inventory all of your assets and look at, what needs to be changed right away, and then what could wait and be, phase 2, phase 3, et cetera, depending on how many assets you have. If you've been in business for a long time, there might be a lot to change, and prioritizing like that will just make your project go much smoother, whether or not, you're waiting to launch until you have everything done. So in conclusion, repositioning or rebranding does not have to mean completely overhauling or kiboshing your business. Taking an inventory of your old versus your new assets and see what you can salvage and how you will align them to the new message is going to just help you with project management, help you get clearer on how you can make this shift gracefully. And last but not least, use this as an opportunity to think big. Your new brand should be what you're aspiring to create. So you always want your brand to be ahead of where you are. As soon as it starts to be where you are or behind is when you start suffering from brand shame, you start losing your confidence, and you start really hitting that glass ceiling. So when you rebrand, don't look at where you want to be this year. Look at where you want to be in the next 5 years. Start speaking to that message. When you start doing that, your progress will actually be so much faster anyway, because you're already talking like you're there. You're living into it, if you will, and you'll start to make the inner shift that needs to happen, as well as the outer shift. All right. So if you guys have any questions, you can post those on the chat. I'm not seeing any questions right now. You can also email Holly at thelandofbrand.com. If you want help with any of this, certainly send me an email. This type of shift and pivoting are things that I help clients with all the time, whether it be just mapping out the strategy, aligning their assets, so reviewing copy, reviewing sales pages, that kind of thing, or if it's doing a whole website overhaul. We do it all. So email me if that's something that you're thinking about doing in the near future. And next week, if you'd like to join us, we're going to be talking about how to talk about what you do at networking events. So, we're not talking about like an elevator pitch and how to memorize your pitch and sound really awkward, but how do you naturally talk about what you do in a way that people understand and aren't confused by? Okay, so I do have a question here. I am a new coach, but I have experience with working with my clients in a live group setting. What would be a great and easy way to start shifting my message toward establishing me as a trustworthy coach for them? Okay, I'm not sure what this shift is. That's why I'm staring at this question. So right now she's working with, you're already coaching with clients in a live group. So of course they're already trusting you to be working with them. So you're anonymous, so I can't say your name. But what do you mean by you're changing your message to establishing you as a trustworthy coach? Because to me it sounds like you're already positioned as a trustworthy coach, is just in a group. So are you talking about being one-on-one? Is this group not run by you and you want to start positioning it to for these people to work with you privately? If you could clarify that question, that would be fantastic, and I'd be happy to answer it. Okay, I'm not seeing a clarification coming through, so I'm going to, oh, here it is. Previously leading a meditation group. Oh, okay. So so you've been leading meditations and now you are shifting into being a coach. Cool. So I'm going to give a so I don't know what the specific scenario that you're in, but I'm going to give you an example or a answer that would probably suit a lot of you that are in similar situations. When it comes to starting to shift how people see you, the first thing you want to do is just start talking about the thing that you're shifting into. So start seeding that you're coaching. Start talking about the problems that you solve. So if people are coming to you for meditation, what are they coming to you for really? Is it what is the meditation doing for them that might lead into your coaching? Like, where is the gap there? And then create a workshop or create some kind of even just blog posts, sharing content, sharing strategies that might help them with those things that you're hearing are in need in that market. Once you start talking about those things, you start to be seen as an expert in that area. It becomes easier for you to start positioning yourself in that way. So if you're leading a group and you're talking about that you have a workshop coming up or you have a different type of group coming up, if anyone wants to talk to you about it, or you just might mention it in passing, these are the kinds of things that I do with my private clients. These are the kinds of things that I do in my coaching practice. Just saying those things naturally in conversation will begin to position you and just kind of plant that seed in people's minds that that's what you do. And if we're talking about, the kind of bigger picture here of creating a website and creating content, like start the new business and then use the audience that you currently have in your old business and start kind of inviting them into the new business. I'm sorry, my baby's starting to wake up. I don't know if you guys can hear him. So I hope that's oh. For some reason, all right, I'm not sure if you guys can still hear me. Am I getting a little thing in my ear saying that my meeting has timed out? I'm not sure how, considering it's supposed to be over an hour. But anyway, so I'm not seeing any other questions. So so I'm going to go ahead and close up shop. So I hope that you've enjoyed today's presentation. I will see you next week about how to talk about what you do at networking events. If you're on Facebook and this was useful for you and you want to, I can keep doing these live, definitely leave a comment and let me know so that I know if we should be doing the kind of dual broadcast. And you can always catch replays on the blog at thelandofbrand.com. And I hope you all have a fantastic day, and I will see you next week. Bye, everyone.